first of all, what do those letters mean on the top of the marker? The first letter is, I'll just write it up. The first letter, it'll have like E, R, Y, whatever, is the name of the color family. So this would be Earth. E for Earth. R would be R for red. The second number, or the second character, is usually a number, and that represents the color group of the family. So this is a 3. So Copic has devised like a sort of like a color wheel, and in that color wheel they've kind of marked, okay, these browns are gonna be this color, this number, and you know, so on and so forth. The last number is gonna be either 0 through 9 or 1 through 9. Anyway, the lower the number, the lighter the color. The higher the number, the deeper the color, the darker the color. So E39 is going to be an earth tone that is pretty dark, or the darkest that it could be. So, and E00 would be a really light, almost, you know, just a touch of that brown in it. So that's what these numbers represent. So what I do to get started is I grab all the darkest colors I have and all the lightest colors I have. I had to devise a way that was gonna be economical, because these pens are just way too expensive. Oh, what's the difference between Sketch and Chow? Two differences. The Sketch is bigger, meaning it holds more ink, and it's more expensive because of this. The Chow holds less ink and is less expensive. And that's all the differences there is. So that's why these Chows are good for beginners, because it's less expensive, and it does the same thing that Sketch does. This Sketch here in Hawaii is $6 for me. This Chow is $3.50 for me. They don't carry these too much here, and so that's why I have to buy the Sketch. I have to see the color in person, so that's my fault, and so that's why I have to buy them here, because I have to have them in my hand and I have to play with them. So anyway, so that's the difference between these two. Okay, so as I was saying, I have all my my 00s, and I usually get the corresponding color in the darkest that I can get it. So really, really deep, rich colors usually end up being the 9s. I usually grab the 9s. And what I do is I grab an acrylic block, or this is actually my palette. This is a Sizzix container. I use anything, and I just put a paper under it, folded up paper under it, so I could see the colors that I'm working with. So all you need is something that's non-porous, that will act as your palette. And what I do is I lay down the color like this, and this ends up being my palette. E39 is one that I use a lot. So what I do is I grab my 00, lightest color. You would say, well, why don't you just use your blender? Well, you could use your blender, your 0, but I usually use the 00s in that color, just because I want a touch of that color in the end product to use as my, you know, as a little highlight or little light reflection. So what I do is I usually, to remind me, I say, okay, my light source is coming from here. You can put something down so that you'll be surprised, but it does help. And you can put something down and say, to remind you, okay, this is where my light source is coming from, and I have to plan accordingly to where my shadows are going to be on this little guy, and where, you know, is the light going to reflect off. And you can build this knowledge by actually just paying attention. You know, go out when you take a walk with the kids, look at the flowers, look and see how the light reflects off of it. Where does it reflect off it? You know, usually it's the high points, and you know, so that's something that you can do fun, you know, for yourself, you know, and just look around. You have to be aware in nature so that you can translate it into your artwork. Alright, so what I do is I pick up my lightest color and use it with the corresponding darkest color. So this is a E00 and this is a E39. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my 00s are going to act as my brush, and the 9s, the dark colors, are going to act as my pigment. So I'm just going to pick it up, or my paint, like I'm going to pick it up just like this. And then I'm going to do small circles, and I'm going to start laying down the color. It's important to go and use circles because it helps with applying the color, and it blends well when you use these little circles. So this is all I do, and I keep on, you know, building and building color. You know, it's gonna come out light. It's gonna come out light, so that's why you gotta really build the color, and you have to, it's an involved process. You have to keep on going back for more color, you know, until you get your color where you want it. And keep in mind, the more you go over the spot, the darker it's gonna be. So, you know, I want this little area like right here. You see how I got my highlight in there? I want to keep that I want to preserve that area. I want to keep it, try and keep that in the shot. I want to keep it, let me see, I want to keep it light. So I'm gonna try and not go over that middle too much. And then I'm just gonna work around and just keep on going. Like I said, this is a real process. It's gonna take a while, but you know, the end result is worth it. And you always just have to go back and apply color. Keep on doing that, and you can even go back with some darker colors. I think this is 59. I use this one a lot to get into that real deep areas that I really want a deep color. And you just play with it just like this. So I would go section by section, until it's nice and blended and you can't really see, you know, where your brush strokes are. And see how I'm preserving that middle? And I would go around the edges and make it darker and keep on blending, you know. It's a process, but I think it's worth it in the end. After you're done, always make sure to clean your tip, run it across, get all of that dark color off, and that's it. So basically that's all I do. When you want to take this off, all you do is I use the Adirondack alcohol blending solution, because it's alcohol. Remember, like is always going to dissolve with like. Pour a little on, because this is my acrylic block, and that's it. And it just comes off like that, and I have my block back. But like I said, it's nice to have something permanent, so I always keep this around, and I just keep on, you know, adding the color. I'm always using 39, so I'm always constantly, that's my biggest line of color. And you just have to add and add and add, and you know, eventually you'll come out with something that you like. But it does save money just because you're just buying 2 of one color instead of 3. When you have the color transferred on the back, or you can see it, that means that you've done a good job in blending. They say that it should show up in the back, and that means that you've done a good job and that you're really getting a good blend out of it. Share with you really quick what I use to stamp my image. I use VersaFine Onyx Black, and I always coat that with the clear embossing powder over that, a super fine clear embossing powder, because the super fine really gets into all these details. It seals it, and so I never have to worry about my stamped image bleeding into my color and my coloring. That's just the way that I do it. In Hawaii, it's so hot and humid, it kind of changes the chemical makeups of some of my ink pads, so I do this as a fail-safe method, and I really like it because it gives you sharp, clean images.